So welcome again to the BlockSpain meetup. Today we have an English day with Conor Svenson, which is the founder of Web3 Labs and author of Web3G. And he will introduce us into Epirus full-stack blockchain development platform. Thank you very much, Conor, to take the chance to talk here in BlockSpain. And I hand over the speech to you, and thank you very much again.
Thanks, Fernando. It's good to be here. So as Fernando said, I'm the founder of Web3 Labs and the original author of the Web3J Ethereum integration library for Java and Android and all the other JVM-based languages. Web3 Labs was started back in 2017, and we've been predominantly focused on Ethereum technology. Really, when the company was started, my goal was always to do what we could to put the hands of this transformative technology into the hands of many. It's, I've always felt that the Ethereum community is much like the Linux community was in the late 90s in terms of there being, it being more than just a technology, it having a real movement behind it. And that was what drew me into Ethereum back in 2016 when I first started, going deep with the technology. And even now in 2020, looking at the landscape, yes, there are a lot of other platforms out there, but I still think with respect to public blockchains, and if you see what's happening within DeFi, with the fact that, the greatest value of DeFi is locked up in the Ethereum network as well, over 1 billion USD, it's testament to the popularity and stickiness of the platform. But still, even now in 2020, for your conventional technologists and teams wanting to build on blockchains, it's still very, very difficult for them to get started, and that the landscape of different tools they need to work with is very segregated. And the Epirus platform really combines a lot of our learnings of the last few years with respect to reducing the friction that people encounter when working with their first blockchain applications, but also developing applications as they go on their journey of working with the technology. And then when it comes to deploying the applications, monitoring them, and so on and so forth, there's just a lot of details and challenges that any company or individual will face, and that is what we have the problem that we are solving with Epirus. So I'm going to start just with a bit more detail about what it is, what you can actually achieve with the Epirus SDK part of the platform, but then I'm going to be giving a demonstration of this because I believe what we have here is very much at a leading edge with respect to the degree of automation and simplification it provides individuals and companies with working with blockchain. So the fundamental challenge here is that, where we got started was blockchain development's very difficult. There's a lot of different concepts and materials that people need to get across to get started. Even once they, decide on, that they want to work with this technology or they have a good use case for it. I think of it much like a funnel. Funnels are used a lot in sales and marketing as a tool for, people and companies to try and get prospective clients over the line with regards to, say signing up to a product in the case of a marketeer, or parting with money to pay for an actual piece of software, which is the case with the salespeople. So I think that this model can be applied nicely to developers as well when they're getting started with blockchain, in that, first of all, they've got to select a blockchain. Then once they've selected a blockchain, they have to figure out how to connect to that blockchain. Maybe there's a service that provides that, or maybe they need to figure out how to run their own node. Then they have to figure out how they obtain a wallet or manage some sort of key to transact with that blockchain network. Only once they've got those details covered can they start to think about writing a smart contract, then how they might be able to test and debug it, and then integrate it with whatever platform they're building on, and then finally deploy it. And if you think about a new developer, why this works so well as a funnel is that at every single one of these stages, people lose interest, and then they no longer continue with their exploration of blockchain. In the same way, when you have a product or service, you look at a website and you might decide to dig around, or you might say, yeah, it looks interesting, but in fact I'm going to look at something else. And so at every one of these stages, there's this notion of drop-off where someone's attention might not held, or it just is too complicated. So So what it means is that a lot more people will start looking at blockchain than those who will actually deploy the application. And that's the behavior that we're really trying to change. And so when we think about this in terms of the practicalities for developers, they have to think about things like creating a project, adding the relevant blockchain dependency in that, whether you're a JavaScript or Java, Python, whatever, you need to sort of say, okay, I need to install a blockchain library into my project. Then they need to figure out how to write a smart contract, test it, then integrate it with their application. And then, of course, there's the running and the running of an Ethereum node and building it. And then, you pray that it all works when when you're doing this in the early days. And then, monitoring, of course, that's an afterthought, because the chances for developers of actually getting to that point where it is deployed on a live network is, there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. And so this is where the Epirus SDK comes in for developers, and it's part of the Epirus suite, which is made up of a couple of other components, which I'll talk about shortly. So with the Epirus SDK, what it enables you to do is, with 3 commands, to actually install a CLI. Then from that CLI, they can create an app, and then they can run another command to deploy that app to a live blockchain network. In our minds, that it's about simplifying the process as much as possible, and we believe that these 3 commands are simplify everything to the greatest degree possible. Behind the scenes, though, that's where a lot of the smarts happen here, in that when on the surface, yes, that's great, but what's the quality of what's happening beneath the surface? And I think that this is a very important point to touch on, because if you're talking to businesses, they don't want something that provides a great example and demo, but then it's not providing the good foundations that they need to actually take this technology to a production deployment. And so behind the scenes, we're creating a project, we're compiling the smart contract, we're integrating it with their a native application. We're providing test automation there, the deployment framework, and also the monitoring framework as well. So once someone's installed the CLI, the next thing they need to do is type this command to actually create a project. And again, I'll demonstrate this shortly. And when they create this project, this creates a smart contract, some tests, application code, and the deployment configuration. The specifics of the smart contract, we provide a simple baseline, which is the your hello world on Ethereum. So it's our belief that technical folk, they want something that works out of the box. They don't want to have to rescaffold all of their projects again and again, creating a new project, adding in dependencies and so on. We think provide a very solid foundation for them to work with. And Hello World is one of those foundations, but we will be providing more shortly. And then in terms of the actual integration, it uses JSON RPC, which sits between the application and the Ethereum network. So the underlying library here is based on Web3J, which is the JVM integration library for Ethereum. It provides account and transaction management. It provides type-safe smart contract integration, which I think is a very important point, because the types used within blockchain platforms aren't the same as the types used in the conventional programming languages. So you need to have type safety to ensure that these smart contracts and your applications are robust. And that's something that we provide there. We also integrate as well with the major JVM build tools as well natively. And we support Ethereum, Quorum, Hyperledger Besu, Geth, all the different nodes really that are compatible with Ethereum networks. So the underlying library itself, Web3J, has had over 100 contributions. It's actually over 500,000 downloads now. It's over 2.7 thousand GitHub stars. We've had funding from the Ethereum Foundation, Ethereum Community Fund, and of course Gitcoin. And then there's some other pieces which I think will be more fun to demonstrate this when we're actually doing the live demo. But the point is that there's there's build time. There's some nice plugins happening as well here. So for those of you who are familiar with writing Solidity, if you're using our platform here, you don't need to install Solidity on your machine in order to to build your applications. Epirus takes care of all of this for you. So what it does, it looks at your smart contract source code and it sees what Solidity versions it needs, and it downloads the relevant versions of Solidity at compile time, the time your project builds, and ensures that it compiles the right version of Solidity. A compatible recent version of Solidity is used for your smart contract compilation. It also provides out-the-box testing with the major Ethereum-based clients as well, because when you write a smart contract, you don't necessarily just want to test it against a test Ethereum network, Ethereum client. You really want to be able to test it against a real a real client that you're likely to be using in a production environment. And so with this, we provide a flexible way for projects created with the Epirus SDK to actually run their tests against any one of a number of different blockchain clients. So it could be Hyperledger Besu, Geth, or Quorum, or specify your own via a Docker file. And so what this means is that you have a test for a smart contract. This is what the test looks like, and again, I'll go to this in the actual demo. But what you can do is you can specify, okay, I'd like to run this test against the Geth node, and you just add that in at the top, and then this executes against a real Geth node rather than an in-memory EVM. And we think it's very important that you can, you're able to support, real node software rather than just ones that are written specifically for a development framework. In this specific example, we wanted to show as well how you could work with a completely different, Ethereum node such as Autonity, or it could be VMware's Concord, for instance. But there's a number of different options out there, and you can add in a Docker Compose that spins up a network for all of your integration or unit tests to run against. And again, nothing else changes other than that top line. Yeah. And then finally, the other piece of the puzzle is the Epirus run command, sorry, the Epirus deploy, which I'll come on to, which is used to actually deploy your contract. And so when you do that, you can then, it deploys the contract, and then you can look at it using the Epirus Explorer, which is a dashboard for viewing all of your smart contracts and viewing a real live network. And so when you go into the Epirus Explorer, you can see specifics about the contract that's being deployed. And if you look down here, you'll also see details of the actual methods that were being called by that by that smart contract as well. So in this instance, we have the constructor being called and the actual text that was passed to it when it ran.
One question here, Conor, regards to more.
Yeah.
So how do you compare the testing framework you are envisioning, which is part of the extension of Web3G, compared to using Truffle directly with testing? So which is more or less the comparisons you make, which features you support and not, to really let a developer and a decision maker to say, well, I will give it a try or not?
Yeah. So, you know, for us here, you know, what's very important. One of them is that, you know, like Truffle, we generate the actual, you know, tests off the back of the smart contract. So you can have an existing smart contract, and then you can generate, you know, unit tests for it. But what Truffle doesn't give you out of the box is the flexibility to test against, you know, different live environments. They have their own embedded EVM. We use a production grade EVM, which is the actual Hyperledger Besu EVM for all of our testing. So what you have there is, you know, as I say, a production grade EVM for doing your development against, but it runs in memory. But we also provide the flexibility to, you know, by just changing a single line to test against other, you know, live blockchain configurations in a Dockerized environment. But the other things though there as well are the integration here in terms of, you know, the actual deployment. You know, Truffle have their Teams product, which is, you know, focused as a continuous deployment type product, and it's more sort of about the deploying of smart contracts. Whereas what we're focusing on here is the you know, enabling people and businesses to actually spin up, you know, blockchain applications, you know, that are kind of ready to go on their own infrastructure, that can plug into all of their kind of release processes and everything else. And we also take care of the crypto piece as well, which I'll come on to.
Yeah, so could we there say that it could be, you're saying that the Web3, the new Epirus SDK is comparable to the test containers part, where you have not only included the testing part, you have like starting up the Docker containers to really test it automatically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Great. And so we do, in terms of our features, we do have the ability to, it's something we've just been getting ready this week. It's not quite ready to demo today, but we do have the ability to generate Dockerized containers, and then, you know, so what's getting built is really something that could be deployed to a Kubernetes cluster or whatever else. It's very much so all nicely contained, but provides optionality about how the keys are managed as well, which I think is an important point. Okay, and so, you know, in summary, what the Epirus SDK does is it, you know, takes care of all of these issues, ultimately speeding up the development process specifically for, you know, blockchain applications. And so, as far as we're concerned, this is what the, you know, the new funnel should be like, whereby people install the CLI, they create their application, they might have to tweak it a little bit, but then they can deploy it. There's not all of these other stages that they need to think about. In terms of the launch, what we've done is we've done a soft launch, in that we have a version of it live now that I'm going to actually demonstrate. What we're looking for is our sort of early access users at the moment, people who want to work with us on the platform, so that we can improve it further before we actually start to promote it heavily. We don't want to come out and, you know, try and you know, broadcast this message as wide as possible just yet, until we've you know, until we've worked closely with some of our customers to make sure, you know, it does what they need it to do. So I'm going to, you know, show you the platform now, and you know, I encourage you as well to, you know, give it a try afterwards. So what I will do, going to open up a new window, and can you just, in terms of the resolution, oops. Okay, is this okay on the screen there?
Yes. Cool. So we are seeing the Epirus platform one, the web page. Yeah,
that's it. So basically, there's, you know, this is all live and this is public. If you go to epirus.io, yeah, you can see this. But there's, as we mentioned, there's 3 components here. You've got the command line interface, the SDK, and then you have the portal, which is the key management place, and then you have the Epirus Explorer, which we've already seen. So what I'm going to be discussing now and showing you is how the SDK works nicely with the portal. So as a developer or a user, of course, first of all, we need to sign up. So I'm just going to use a, actually, I'll use my Web3 Labs. So I'm going to submit here. Okay, and so what this will do is this will send me an email. So it's, I'll be with us in just 1 minute. Well, it's, yeah. Oh, hold on 1 moment. It's not a good start. So should have gone through. It might be because I've already used this account here. So let me just use a different account. Okay, sorry, there must be a problem with our email service. It should have come through there, the email to activate it. So anyway, what would happen here is that so you basically have an activation link that comes through, and then you sign in. And then from there, you get taken to the dashboard. And so what we have is we have the Epirus CLI. And so in your terminal window, just making this nice and big, so hopefully it's very visible. Okay, it's just telling me it's already installed. So I have the most current version. Let's bring it up here, and then we're going to do Epirus. We're going to do Epirus new. And so what this is going to do is it asks me the project name, the package name, if I want to use my global wallets that it can create, and it shows me the wallets that are available. So at the moment we just have the test wallets that's created in a separate key store. Sorry, just 1 moment. I'll just clear out the so it's I'm going to restart this because I think it's been a release there that might have caused some problems. Are there any other questions at the moment?
Not by now, so you can go forward.
And it's getting this from GitHub, so I don't know why it's taking a long time for some reason. So it should be a nice quick download there. Okay, so we'll do this again. So we do the Epirus new, we specify the project name, the package, and we generate a wallet. And then we specify where we actually want our application to be. So what it's doing here is it's generating the scaffolding of a project that's actually, you know, a real project. It's not, you know, it's not just copying some code from somewhere. It's actually copying it and building it to ensure that you have, you know, a real deployable project. So then from there we go into our Web3 application, and then from here we just type Epirus deploy and we specify our network. Sorry, yeah, and I need to log on to Epirus as well. So I'm just going to log in. Okay, so the first thing that's happening is it's actually realizing that the wallet that's been created in the earlier stages doesn't have any ether associated with it. So it's funding that wallet with some real ether. And so we're just waiting for that to happen. And again, this is all, anyone who's using the Epirus platform gets to use this. And you know, it just takes care of the transaction fees. So now it's got that. So now what it's doing is it's actually running our application. And so this application is a very straightforward one. What it does is it basically deploys a Hello World smart contract, and then from there it exits. So what this is doing is it's deploying a Hello World smart contract and then verifying that it can get value from it. But then from there, what we can do is we can go and check out that URL. Oops, let's try and copy that again. Yeah, open URL. So this is a version of Epirus that's running against the Rinkeby testnet. That's fully synced because this was a transaction that just happened, and we can already see it there. And we can go in and we can have a look at this this actual transaction, and we can see that this contract got deployed, and the hello blockchain world was passed in. So our greeting was actually passed in. So if we then look at the account that sent that, we can see that initially there was like a transfer that went to that account, and then basically sent the transaction. So you know, this is the whole, you know, demonstration of the 3 commands to actually go from, you know, 0 to actually having a live application there. So you know, in order to do this, all I've had to do is sign up for the Epirus platform and install the CLI, and then create the application and then run the application. I've not had to do anything with wallets. I've not had to do anything with actual network connectivity, and so on and so forth. Then additionally, if we go to the actual Epirus dashboard, platform dashboard here, we can see details of, you know, credentials that can be used for these networks. We can see, you know, how many API calls we're using, of, you know, what our allocation is, how much ETH has been funded. But we can also see all of the actual, you know, contracts that have been created against the account. So this account did previously, you know, sorry, this account, the Conor at Web3 Labs, it's deployed, it's got a couple of different wallets associated with it. And so we can see details of those wallets. We can also see details of all of the contracts that have been created as well. And again, these link to Epirus if we want to see them there. We also have details of the underlying network calls that were being used as well. So you know, what this means is that, you know, normally when people are working with Ethereum networks, they'll talk to a node, but then they won't remember all of the different contracts they've deployed, or all of the different, you know, wallet addresses they've used. Using the Epirus platform, all of this information is captured, so you have a single place where you can see all of this information and have it. There's also the documentation portal as well to support all of this, where you have specifics on the Explorer, the actual portal, and then the SDK as well. Yeah, and so that's where we feel that having a platform offer here adds a lot of value, because it significantly simplifies the overall process for people here. Did anyone have any questions about this portal and this demonstration that I've done so far?
No questions right now.
Okay. So what I will do is I will actually open up the code as well. So, on the surface, it seems fairly simple, but I'll show you all of the code behind the scenes that's been created here too. And again, just to re-emphasize that the only prerequisites to install the Epirus CLI is a Java virtual machine to be installed on your machine. Nothing else. You don't need Solidity installed. You don't need anything else there. So I demonstrated the deployment just now, and so what we have was that we have this. I'll just make this bigger. We have this Hello World we have this Hello World application that's sorry, not that. It's the generated code. You don't want to be looking at the generated code. It gets a little bit nasty. We have an application basically that's been generated that deployed our Hello World smart contracts and actually loaded our our wallet file. And so that's there. There's not really too much to talk about there, other than it deploys our smart contract. But the other thing though is there's a unit test that's being created as well. So we can run this unit test, and you can see that this unit tests works. Just let it compile. So say maybe we actually change something. So we say, okay, well, let's make sure that instead of saying replace me, we want it to say hello blockchain world, which is more reasonable. We'll just put that here. We'll put that here. But what we'll do is we'll check that it's hello blockchain world with a space. So then if we run this, okay, so then that test fails, but it also tells us exactly where the test failed as well. So on line 30 in our in our Solidity code, which is right here, that's where the failure actually was of the application. So it's it's very robust behind the scenes what's actually being created here as well. And if you can imagine, if someone's actually trying to develop an application here, they want to ensure that their tests work, but then that it's very easy to debug any problems with the smart contracts, because smart contract development is tedious in the sense that it's complex and hard to get right. But the other fun thing we can do here is we can say, okay, well, this is testing against a in-memory this is testing against an in-memory Hyperledger base EVM, but how about we just run it against the Geth node instead? So, again, this unit test will fail because we still have the space here. But what's nice is that now we're actually running against a completely different node type. We can see it fails as expected. However, if we then remove that space, you can see it succeeds. And so there's a lot of details behind the scenes in terms of the flexible framework that's been built up over the last few years by Web3 Labs supporting all of this. So if we look at some of the build artifacts that talks to this, so what's getting actually generated at build time is quite interesting, because we have a smart contract wrapper that's being generated here. And so this is basically, your type safe, your Java code to actually work with smart contracts. But there's also what's being generated too is Solidity resources, because excuse me, we can see here that there's your Solidity artifacts as well associated with the Solidity file. Those are being generated as well at compile time too. So there's all of these sort of artifacts behind the scenes, so that if someone say I want to maybe I want to, I don't know, if I want to change something here, then I rebuild the project and then everything will be updated by it. So it just simplifies the whole process. But on the surface, we make it as simple as possible for people to do the high level task, which is deploy the smart contracts. But it's important that when they start to scratch beneath the surface, that they have something that's very robust to work with. And this is where we've got to with respect to the Epirus platform. Okay, and that really is everything that I wanted to cover here. As I said, right now we've done a soft launch insofar as we're not trying to broadcast this to the world at this point. We just want to work with keep working with like a small number of individuals and firms to actually get this to be where it needs to be for really broadcasting it to the masses. So were there any further questions?
No, so I was just realizing all the EVM test and Geth and Besu part. Is the documentation updated in the Web3 Labs part, or is it something that you have something quite new?
So the documentation on that part is in it's likely in the Web3J documentation. Yeah, so actually. Yeah, I'd need to double check on that. It's in terms of the Epirus documentation, we're trying to migrate parts of the Web3J documentation over, but at the same time we don't want to just sort of duplicate everything. Okay,
no, I was just asking because I didn't know that. So that you are booting up Docker containers to the Geth and the Besu part, so it's quite good. So really good to know. So this is why I was looking at the documentation. It didn't seem so. As soon as you have updated, it will be right to work with it.
Yeah, I'll double check that we do provide that information, because it should be obvious. Yeah, it should be clear about it. Oh, okay. Yeah, so like I said, if you head to the Web3 Labs website, you can see details of Epirus there, and you can follow through the sign-up process that will work. Yeah, to get started, and please reach out to me as well. If you do sign up, I mean, we'll of course see it, but it's we want to be conversing with our customers, our early adopters as well, because there's a lot that we have on our roadmap. So before too long we'll be actually supporting mainnet, and also as well we're going to have we're going to have RESTful APIs that are being created here. So you'll be able to plug into the platform using JavaScript, Python, of course Java as well. So there won't it won't be sort of forcing you to use a specific base. It will just be very much so API driven, which I think is important, so that people have that flexibility. Cool.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you for hosting me, Fernando.
Yes. So if there's any questions, so thank you very much, Conor, for the presentation. I think you are one of the most worthwhile people in the Ethereum space, working a lot on the enterprise Ethereum part, and also making it mainstream with the Web3J implementation, which is the most used and the most common language. And thank you very much for taking the chance to talk and talk to you soon.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Fernando, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, cheers. Bye-bye.